Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Friday Night Drinks. This time we're doing a little bit different in a Zoom setting. We are lucky enough to have Josh Marsden from Active and Thriving. So thanks for joining, mate.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Josh.
Appreciate it, Theo. Appreciate it, Christian. Looking forward to having a bit of a chat with you and hope to add a bit of value to your audience.
Absolutely, awesome. Absolutely. So, mate, so usually we start here with your origin story. So go back as far as you like, as far back as you're comfortable, and sort of take us through, what sort of makes you you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question to start with, Theo. I don't think we're going to delve all the way back into my makeup, but I'll give you the fast version. So I guess I'm a country boy originally, so from Stanthorpe in Queensland. So Stanthorpe's known for two reasons: apples predominantly, and also the rumour that it gets a lot of snow. Doesn't really get a lot of snow, once in every 10 years or so, but very cold place. But anyway, that was a good time growing up, but I was one of seven, so big Christian family, and I was two boys and five sisters. So that was always interesting growing up. But I always had a really big interest in health and wellbeing. So ended up going to uni and doing Bachelor of Exercise Science, so exercise physiology, and Bachelor of Business, because I wasn't really sure where I was going to end up. So I figured a business degree would probably help out somewhere along the way. Anyway, so went through that process like everybody did, and then went and got a real job. And while I was working as a health coach at Queensland Police Service, so working in the gym there and going around the state, coaching police officers on how to live healthier lives, started to realise that there was a fair bit of gaps in the knowledge as far as what people should be doing, what people are doing, and then also what organisations were doing to support them. So I actually started a company in 2015 called the Active Workplace Challenge, which focused on bringing people together socially in the workplace to focus on their diet, sleep, and exercise. So that was my first crack at a digital program. I actually didn't have a smartphone at the time, so I needed to buy a smartphone so I could really test the application that I was actually building, with the idea that it's people inside organizations that have the greatest ability to influence those around them. So we really need to try and build up ecosystems in places we work. Anyway, I was slogging away.
Sorry to jump in from it, like just from a nerdy perspective, from my interest. How did you go about putting that product together? Did you sort of bootstrap it all? Did you do it offshore? Did you just do a web-based app to start with? How did you go about your MVP?
Yeah, so it was tough. So as mentioned, I was an exercise physiologist, which is essentially a glorified gym guy. So I didn't have any technology experience. Not that there's anything wrong with being a gym guy either, mind you. But the idea was that I mapped out kind of what I thought active workplace would look like, so wireframe it up and so forth. And then I thought it was a matter of going out and finding a tech team like consultancy here in Australia. But I couldn't really find anybody that could do it with the price point I had, because I was bootstrapping it. So basically I took a redundancy from the organization I was at to try and get it going. So kind of all the chips on the table, which is pretty exciting, and wouldn't recommend it for the faint-hearted, as I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, risky.
But couldn't really, like I said, Australian tech talent is very talented and also very experienced. But my brother-in-law, he was working for a tech company, and whenever they had something quite technical that they needed done, they would use this organization over in Spain to do that, which was a lot more comfortable for my price appetite. And so that organization, DeBeek, is actually still working with us through the Active and Thriving program now, which is what we've evolved into. And yeah, you're right. I think it was, it is a web app. And the very first iteration, it was garbage. It was basically like an access sort of form, essentially, with a few bells and whistles on it. But it was, they say you should be disgusted when you look back on your MVP, and definitely fall into that.
I was about to say, they say, if you're not, then you've waited too long.
I was actually, I was thinking the other week, I wanted to actually try and find it and see what it looked like, but I couldn't really find anything, because I think I actually destroyed all the evidence of where we started out in that space. But anyway, rolled out the MVP. I think in the first year we took on 15 clients of generally small, medium-sized clients, and proved the model. But then obviously needed more funding, needed more opportunity. and ended up partnering up with my good friend Louis, who's now the co-founder of Active and Thriving. So he's a physiotherapist, and he was looking to basically use gamification and social connection in the clinical setting, which is what I was doing in the corporate setting. So we thought we'd put our heads together and see what we could do. And we actually found a really good opportunity to run a healthy lifestyle program over in Western Australia called Move Together. And it was funded by the federal government. So it was the first ever digital program funded by Sport Australia. Awesome. And that actually helped us bootstrap into the Active and Thriving program, which is equally balanced between mental, physical and social wellbeing, but still really heavily underpinned by that social connection, teamwork and gamification to help people change their behaviours.
That's so cool. I love it. It's a great concept, cool. Mate.
Interesting.
So, tell us a little bit more, like get a little bit into Active and Thriving itself. I know you just gave us a little quick summary there, but talk to us about how that sort of evolved and
So similar sort of story really, Theo. So while we were getting the Move Together program going with Louis, and the Active Workplace Challenge was still running, but it was still focused on physical wellbeing, so just that diet, sleep and exercise. I was actually still working in a wellbeing manager role for a large organisation, and was really struggling to find a mental health solution that could be delivered across a multi-site organisation. And Louis was working in the hospital looking after the wellbeing program as well, while also acting as a physiotherapist. And he had the same problem. He didn't have a lot of time to focus on wellbeing, so he wanted something digital. So we really saw that the best right now, you either need to buy a physical wellbeing application and then a mental wellbeing application, try and get users to utilize both of them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the thought was that if they have to use two, they're not going to use any of them.
Yep.
So that's what Active and Thriving has become. It's become the complete wellbeing solution that's equally balanced between diet, sleep, exercise, mental wellbeing, physical wellbeing, social connection, and just recently also a really strong emphasis on financial wellbeing for our next upgrade, which would be really cool as well.
That's great, mate. So look, you were asking me before we started recording how the pandemic sort of affected our business. How about you? I'd imagine something like this would be even more important now, and especially, even from the early onsets 18 months ago, or however long ago it was that we all sort of got sent home or decided to, our company, Christian and I decided to send all our team home sort of that first week of March as we saw it getting a little bit worse. And certainly had impacts. I put my hand up and said, I definitely struggled at points, and this latest lockdown wasn't fun either. So, I'm assuming that it's really, you've had a lot of uptake over this period.
So it's really been quite interesting for the corporate health and wellbeing space, and then the digital health and wellbeing space in particular. But like many organizations, when COVID first happened, I just remember it clear as day, my diary just got completely emptied in the space of a couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, I've actually got no sales calls, no demos, no client meetings. What's going on here? This isn't good. And it stayed pretty quiet through the winter period, coming up until I think spring of the end of last year. And then it had started to pick up again and started to go quite well. And what's been interesting is that one of the strongest determinants of a successful wellbeing program is leadership support. And quite often a barrier to getting a wellbeing program into the organisation is that senior leadership, because they'll be looking at the dollars and cents.
Yes.
But since COVID, they've seen the impact. So the cost of mental health injuries is going up and up every month. And COVID's had a big part towards that. So now we can actually see what's happening when we don't prioritise the mental health and wellbeing of our people. So yeah, we've been starting to get a lot more activity, and we're fortunate as an organisation that we are digitally delivered. So while we went through the COVID period, we're actually able to keep going with all of our clients and support them. And we actually improved the mental health, physical health and social health outcomes of all of our clients through that period as well.
I bet you did.
Because we're able to connect them, even though they were working from home for the first time. Some of them were stood down, but they still had something to give them purpose and meaning and collaborate with every day.
Absolutely. No, that's great point. Super important. You mentioned something around, the dollars and cents, and I saw with my wife who used to have a wellness business, and who used to just see that a lot of them would just want to tick that box They didn't really care what was in the program. They just wanted to be able to say that they were doing it. Have you seen a shift there? I know you mentioned just then that as long as they can see the bottom line being impacted, they're happy. But do you see a genuine shift? And is it just sort of smaller businesses that are closer to their staff, or are big corporates doing it too?
That's an interesting observation, and we are getting there, but the shift is actually a little bit different. So it's actually the larger organizations. So the smaller organizations definitely still do want to do things to support the well-being of their people, and they are worried about them, but they don't really have the health knowledge. So it's more of an education piece for those smaller organizations about what an integrated health and well-being plan looks like. And it's not just fruit bowls, yoga classes, and all that fun stuff. It plays a part, but it is actually looking at the work that they do every day. So the people that we are able to really sell the vision for are organizations that have a dedicated wellbeing plan, or at least a policy in place, because there's that level of accountability towards it, so that it's tangible, right? What gets measured is what gets done.
And it's usually those businesses are the ones that have a person in the business that sort of wants to bring that into the business, because they say it's really important. So they have that one person in the business that wants to distribute that knowledge throughout the whole, management, leadership, further down onto the staff. Would you agree? Yeah,
absolutely. So you need that champion, whether it be formal through
that's
a
it, that champion.
manager.
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and you get some organizations have fantastic champions where they don't actually have any authority as far as the line item on the budget, but they just have so much influence, and they're willing to push the narrative really strongly that they get things done. And then the other model is the more formal, where wellbeing might sit with the health and safety team, or the people and culture team, or the HR manager, and that's how they follow through on it. But quite often the problem is time, right? They've got their HR portfolio to look after, and then they've been added the wellbeing role, which they might not have experience with. So the idea is that how can we make it as easy as possible for them?
Absolutely. What sort of, you spoke to the uplifts around the three, I couldn't remember exactly what you said, the three pillars that you mentioned around the uplifts, where you saw improvements around the three different types of wellness pieces that you were measuring. Do you have any other sort of data or feedback around trends, around how let's talk about your product has been helping these businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we measure success is, we get measured by success very much around engagement. So organizations need that engagement, they need buy-in onto the platform and so forth. But how we measure success and report back on success are the outcomes that we produce. So we use a series of surveys multiple times throughout the year called the Global Mental Health Score, Global Physical Health Score, and Social Connectedness Score. So they're our primaries that we run whenever we do a core program, pre and post. So we're able to tangibly track how the organisation is going and identify people that might be high risk of either mental, physical, or social illness or poor health. So successes that we have specifically are, say for example, we run a program called Thriving Minds, which is focused on developing a sense of purpose and building your personal resilience, while also looking at organizational resilience. So we recently ran that with a global client. So in 23 countries, about 900 people participated. Wow. And before we started that program, 1 in 15 of them were considered high risk of mental health concern, which is a pretty high risk when the average mental health claim is $24,500 in Australia. So by the end of that program, we actually reduced that risk. So 50% of those people went from high risk to either moderate risk or low risk. So that was actually a reduced risk of mental health risk of a few $100,000, which is what we show the organisation, what highlights that senior executive that wellbeing isn't a nice to have, it's going to have a tangible impact on your business. And we can bring up cases that we know of where we've worked in large organisations where an organisation's paid $500,000 in workers comp for a single person.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So when you talk about it's chump change for your wellbeing program comparably.
Yeah. I don't want to being one of the guys in our team that manages our sales. I don't want to steal your thunder and sort of skip the demo process and all the rest of it. But what do your pricing tiers look like for organizations if it's that straightforward?
It's relatively straightforward. So it's basically calculated per FTE based on the size of the organization. So grouped into small, so less than 100, medium up to 500, large up to 1,500, and then to like enterprise, which is POA. And the idea is that a good wellbeing initiative will typically get 30% engagement across the staff. So we basically, our pricing is built at expecting 30% of your people will engage in active and thriving. But in reality, our numbers are sitting up over that 45%. And for organizations that we get really high levels of buy-in from leadership support, as I mentioned, it's such a key pillar, we actually can get up over 60% buy-in. So we like to say that everyone over 30% is free, right?
Okay, I understand. Cool. That's awesome. We'll have to give it a go in our business for sure.
I'd love to have you on board for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, like I'm super interested in gamification and obviously, even just your data, let alone all the other products that do it, have shown that it increases engagement, right? Content has to be in context and engaging as well. But the fact that there is that gamification aspect, I'm sure it increases engagement. So you spoke about those engagement numbers there. Where have you sort of seen it, aside from sort of that leadership engagement, where have you sort of seen it go wrong, if at all? Like, I'm sure some companies have tried to put it in and just with any platform, it can flop, right?
And it's one of those things, Theo, where engagement was the new kid on the block for solving everybody's problems a couple of years ago. It's like, let's gamify everything. Let's gamify sales. Let's gamify productivity. Let's do all these sorts of things, which is fantastic. But it's not always going to work. It's not always going to have success. So when people talk about gamification, they're typically talking about trophies, badges, leaderboards, competitions, which is great. And we include all of those. But the most effective element of gamification is actually that social connection. And that's where a lot of people fall short with their gamification process. They've got points allocated, they've got leaderboards and so forth, but there's no push-pull through competition. But then also likewise, the social pressure of not letting somebody down.
Yeah.
So one of the evolutions of our organization is that we've always been team-based. So we always do team-based challenges throughout the year. But we used to do teams of 5. So in 2018, we started working with Dr. Sean Young. He's the executive director of UCLA Center for Digital Behavior Change and Prediction Technology. It's a massive mouthful.
Wow, how do you remember that?
Yeah, it's a massive mouthful. But he's got a model of behavior change called the science model, which has 7 different strategies to help people change their behaviors. And at the top of that list, or one of the most powerful, is that community approach. So once we started working with Sean, we made a lot of changes, but one of the key ones was going from teams of 5 down to teams of 3, because teams of 3 is the magic number. Because if you have 3 people, as you can imagine, you've got the captain, the champion, the first person that signs up. They're the one that's hyper enthused and ready to go. They've got the ability to influence 1 or 2 other people pretty well. But then once it becomes their third person coming in, fourth person, fifth person, sixth person, it becomes a lot harder to bring them along on the ride. And likewise, if you're the second and third person that joins the team, you don't want to let your team captain down. You probably know it yourself. You've had to meet somebody for a gym or a workout early in the morning. It's cold outside. You don't want to do it, but you do it because they're there. So there's that social pressure to not let them down. And when we break behavior change down really simply, we either do things to impress somebody, so we want to look good, or we do something to not let somebody down as well. So that's why when we talk about gamification, what works, having that social element, I can't stress enough as a key element for sure. Like the more the better. So
true. I mean, I intentionally still have a trainer instead of trying to do it myself, because I'll definitely go less.
Exactly. Most people get the gist of what they need to do for exercise, but you just want that extra little nudge. You want that gentle push to go a little bit heavier, run a little bit faster.
And just show up.
and just show up, First step is always showing up.
That's awesome, mate. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, I'm no expert in this space, but that sounds quite innovative and I haven't really seen anything like that before across the businesses that I've had conversations with either the owner or leadership in terms of how they run their wellbeing programs and these types of platforms. So certainly sounds like it's pretty pioneering. So with that in mind, where do you see not just your product, but the wellbeing in the workplace in general over the next few years? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting space, and we're starting to see a lot of that movement now. And Active and Thriving, we're definitely planning to be on the front foot of that shift in the way that people implement and run wellbeing inside organisations. A couple of obvious ones, quick wins, are that people are starting to include sleep as a core priority in their health and wellbeing program, knowing that so many staff are coming into work fatigued for various different reasons. So we need to increase the health literacy on that space and help them be better rested, because then they're going to be more effective employees as well, and generally have a better outlook on life. The other one is financial wellbeing. So this is something that a lot of organisations are now asking for as part of their wellbeing program. And this is really important because it adds so much value in a couple of ways. One, it's not always possible to pay your employees more money, right? But if you can teach your employees to be more effective with their money, then that's essentially giving them a pay bump in a different sense as well. And I mean, it gets plenty of media that we don't actually learn how to manage our money through the education process. So the idea is we need to take it back a step and teach people how to manage their own financial circumstances and help them thrive that way. So financial wellbeing will be a really big one. The other one is, again, really trying to ingrain into the workplace. So looking more about the environment itself, not just giving people programs to do that help their wellbeing. So think about diet, sleep, exercise, the stuff we just spoke about, but also changing the way they work. So increasing the impact of flexible work, reasonable adjustments for people so they can get the best out of their working day. And then also looking at the roles themselves. So do some of the roles in the workplace provide extra levels of stress or fatigue? Should we be rotating roles more frequently? So looking at job design as well is going to be a really big one. And then the one that Active and Thriving is currently pushing towards is that integration into business as usual. So right now, quite often wellbeing it's part of the organisation, but it's something else you need to do. It's something outside of work time, typically. So our goal is to ingrain the Active and Thriving program into business as usual, so that it's part of it's everybody's responsibility to support it inside the organisation, not just a value add to employees. And we plan to do that through integrations into systems that are already in place.
Awesome. Makes me feel good about us. We've done a couple of those.
Oh, well done. What have you been doing?
I mean, one of them that was mostly driven by me was just having somewhere nicer to work. With sort of still keeping to our budget, it just sort of it definitely was taking a toll on me. So I just thought that it would be taking a toll on some of the other teams. So we recently moved offices. They've even got a meeting room with this. They won't let me into that cabinet behind me.
Cabinet's locked.
I'll find a way to get in. But that's definitely increased the mood. It's our first week this week, and we can see people noticeably are more comfortable, and even comments like, "Oh, great, I can have a shower now and ride my bike in," when the weather's better and things like that. We definitely have a lot of roles that are, because they're project-based type roles, that it can be pretty intense and high intensity. So we have something called cloud time, which is essentially, to an extent, uncapped leave, but it's essentially like, if people are feeling the pinch, they can sort of let us know and we'll give them some time off that doesn't take from their annual leave.
These are fantastic, Theo. And then, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing this is the final thing, and it might, going onto your platform might give us some ideas or help us, but building in some sort of, program or activity. We've got a gym in the building we're in. We're in South Melbourne, so there's plenty of things that plenty of yoga studios, plenty that we can do at lunch or during the day and not miss a step. So it's good to hear that, because we're on the right path. Definitely plenty to go. We can always improve. Everyone can. But that's cool, mate. So with all of that in mind, what changes are you making to your product to sort of stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, so the big things that we'll be doing over the next couple of months are looking at our incentives program. So right now we typically do a bespoke incentives program for each organisation based on their budgets and so forth. And that would be typically physical rewards. So we're actually shifting to be more meaningful rewards. In the essence, it's going to be tailored, still bespoke to each organisation, but it'll be rewards will be given at an organisation level, and there'll be things like giving people 15 minutes or 30 minutes early marks after they progress to a certain stage through the Active and Thriving program, giving out coffee vouchers to give as an act of kindness to an employee, or getting a lunch with the CEO. So things that really build up the internal culture rather than just focusing on the discounts and so forth. The other one is integrating with the HR systems so that we're actually able to provide more bespoke content based on each employee's life cycle. So when somebody comes into the organisation, we'll be able to give them their Wellbeing welcome pack digitally as well. Likewise, if somebody goes off on leave, when they come back, we'll be able to then welcome them back into the organisation with what they can do from a wellbeing standpoint. And then really importantly is really tailoring content for managers themselves. So we already have a managers program, but this will be ingrained so that when they've got a new starter, when they've got an employee coming back from workers' compensation, something like that, they'll be getting specific information to guide that process and do it with confidence as well, so that it's just part of the way they work. They're just a few of the surprises we've got coming.
Oh, that's awesome. Christian, you usually have 3 tips.
I do. I mean, I'll just be listening to you guys talk, because seriously, this is a space for me that's I'm not going to say ignorant. I'm aware of it because Theo does a lot of it, but it's something that my generation did not really sort of like put in the forefront of the business. It was always in the back end. Yes, we've got this, this option, yes, we've got, but in the last 2 years, it's just come right to the front of the business. Like, it needs its head in hand with, I'll probably say with, making money, making sure your employees are all taken care of. So it's like I said, I was just been listening to you guys talk. The gamification kind of interests me a little bit, that I'm all about having fun in the business and having activities that create laughter. I strongly believe that laughter is essential to everyday living and it should be a part of the workforce. But that's just me, that's just me. I'm not.
Especially when we get to laugh at you every day.
Yeah, if you're laughing at me with me, it doesn't really matter as long as you're laughing. You know what I mean?
All right. In lieu of that, I've got one, mate. So
yeah, I've got 5 questions, by the way. So
you've got the quick fire. That's fine.
I've got the quick fires.
Nice. So before we get to that, 3 simplistic changes employers can implement to create a healthier culture within the workplace.
So I think I've mentioned a couple of times through this session, but the very first thing would be to be a leader that visibly supports health and wellbeing. And when I say that, I mean, you mentioned that your workplace has a bike room. So if you're riding into work, let everyone know that you come in, you have a shower and so forth, so people can feel comfortable doing it same
Lead
way.
by example.
Exactly right. Add it into your team meetings, add a mindfulness moment or something, or just let the world know what you're grateful for. And then that has a massive impact. The other ones are, you actually mentioned before, so I'm so proud and happy that you did, the environment itself. See what minor improvements you can change to the working environment. It can just be putting up photos, opening windows, improving the lighting, because that makes it so much easier to work. And then the last one is there's so much free content out there that you can actually share with your employees. So if you see something that grabs you, just share it through an all-staff email or with your direct work group so that it can rub off on some of the other people, because all behaviours are contagious.
Cool.
Awesome. Great.
Cool.
Thank you. Christian, over to you, mate.
Yeah, so we're going to do our Friday quick fires. So I'm going to shoot some questions you need to answer really quickly. Okay, here we go. What is your biggest source of motivation?
Family, for sure.
That's good. What's the most recent lesson you've learned?
Most recent, nothing's done until it's closed. Thinking about recruitment, actually.
If you could run any other business, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it would be something it'd be just a technology business, something innovative.
A trainer, a physical?
I've done that. I've been on the gym floor, mate. Not again. It was the glorious time of my life, but not again.
Like you're doing a robot move there, Christian.
I don't know.
It was on the cross trainer. I've seen the cross trainer at the gym.
What is your favorite color and why?
What is my favorite? It's purple, and I don't know why. It just always has been. I'm actually looking at the corner of Microsoft Teams on my desktop. It just resonated for some reason.
Nice.
Great. What's one thing that really makes you happier than all other things?
Just big groups of people, like people you're close to, big groups of friends. So I'm very much a solo a lot of time in this remote workplace. But if you get me with a big group of friends on the weekend, just light up.
Yeah, just people in general.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good people.
Good. Great answers. Awesome.
Thanks for that. That was fun.
Mate, it's incredible. Half an hour's flown by. So thank you very much. It's been really great chatting to you. We'll definitely connect after this. We really want to have a go at the platform. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day or night.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, Friday night, exactly. Awesome.